everyone, my name is April and this is Thrifted Transformations, the show where I go thrifting for old clothing and transform them into something new. In this episode of Thrifted Transformations, I thrifted this curtain right here for $3, and when I first saw it, it really inspired me to transform it into a formal dress. I really like the scalloped edge along the bottom and the gold flowers. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and let's get started. Here's the design I came up with. I want to incorporate the scalloped edges along the top and bottom of the dress, and basically the size of the curtain and the placements of the flowers and scallops decides what this dress will look like. Since the curtain is sheer, I did purchase additional material to make this dress. Keep in mind the amount I buy is enough to make the dress in my size, so you might need to buy more or less fabric for your project. Since I'll be using the bottom scallop section for the skirt, I have to create my own scalloped edge along this middle section for the bodice. I measured 2 inches along the scalloped edge and made markings all the way down. Next, I already had some bodice pattern pieces at home from previous projects, so I just slightly altered them for this dress. Lay out all the pattern pieces, lining up the top edge with the inner corner of each scallop. This is the trickiest part right here because you can't just cut them out anywhere. You have to make sure the scallops will line up along the seams. Now that the curtain bodice is cut, I cut out 2 more bodices out of the lining fabric. One will be used to sew behind the curtain pieces so they're no longer transparent, and the other lining bodice will be the actual lining of the dress. Hand baste the white bodice layer to the curtain pieces along all the edges so they act as one. I've tried basting on my machine and it doesn't work because organza moves around too much, so trust me and just hand sew. It's a fine dressmaking technique I learned in class and it will save you from a lot of frustration later. Here I'm applying some interfacing and I probably should have just hand sewed it with the rest earlier, but I forgot. So now I'm fusing it with my iron. Do what I say and not as I do. The reason why I need interfacing is to make the bodice stiff and structured. I'm also adding boning to it later, so it'll help with that as well. Now we can sew all the bodice and lining pieces together. Once it's constructed, I sew in my boning cases along the seam. To sew the casing in so that it doesn't show through the front of the bodice, I make sure to only sew it on the seam allowance. Next, baste the 2 bodice right sides together and sew along the scalloped edges. To make your lives easier, make sure to mark your seam allowance to get even scallops. I tried understitching the white lining down, but it was really challenging because of the curved seams, so I just used a seam creaser tool to help pop out all the edges and then press them so they're nice and crisp. Moving on to the skirt, I cut right above the second row of flowers from the bottom of the curtain, which was at the perfect length for a tea dress. Just like the bodice, the skirt needs to have some white fabric behind it so it's not see-through, and this will also make the white color stand out more so the skirt doesn't look tan. I hand sew the white fabric behind the skirt so they act as one piece of fabric. After sewing the white layer behind the skirt, I sewed a basting stitch along the top and gathered the skirt to fit my waist. Also, the size of the curtain you find will determine how gathered your skirt will be. If you're lucky, you'll find 2 sides of the curtain and will have more material to work with. But since I only had 1 to work with, I couldn't gather the skirt as much as I wanted to. For the lining skirt, I quickly drafted an A-line skirt and sewed it to the lining bodice. To make the skirt poof out, I'm recycling this petticoat that I saved from a previous transformation and adding the gather tool along the bottom of the lining skirt. I decided I wanted the skirt to be even more poofy, so I sewed 1 layer of gather tool to the lining skirt. Next, pin all the layers at the side and baste them together so they're not all over the place. To sew the zipper in, I marked my 1-inch seam allowance and sewed the zipper through all layers. I just kept it simple since there's a lot of layers to work with, and originally I sewed an invisible zipper, but the skirt kept getting stuck and I had to re-sew it so many times that the zipper got messed up. So in the end, I used an all-purpose white zipper. Once the zipper is in, all that's left to do is close up the opening along the bottom. This part took me forever because the scalloped edge at the bottom wasn't matching up, and the perfectionist in me had to take out the zipper and realign everything. I eventually got it to match up and finished the skirt. Lastly, I decided to add some skinny straps by recycling the leftover gold fabric. My straps are about 5/8 of an inch and I turned them inside out using this loop turner. It took me forever to get it going, but I eventually was able to turn it completely inside out. I was going to make it strapless, so I didn't include the straps earlier, so now I have to go back and sew them in. This whole tutorial was all over the place, so I apologize about that, but to be honest, I'm always just figuring things out along the way.
That's a huge ass. Ew. Got it.
Here is the final transformation. Enjoyed the 50th episode of Thrifted Transformations. As usual, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more episodes like this, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Shout out to these awesome people for sharing their creations with me. You guys are making the world a better place. If you want to be featured next, use the hashtag coolirpa on Instagram or Twitter so I can like and comment on your photos. Bye!